Welcome to the Geula Mamas Club, your place for everything pregnancy, birth, and babies. I'm Sibi Goodman, midwife, doula, mama, and safta, and founder of the Geula Mamas Club. I'm here today with Ayelet Schwell. Hi!
Hello!
And who is Ayelet? I'm going to tell you all about her. Ayelet is a successful birth professional who built her practice living in the rural beauty of the Golan Heights. Oh, I'm jealous. While also raising her 5, now 6 kids, Baruch Hashem. Aside from her doula work, she runs workshops for mothers who have experienced birth trauma and mentors other service-based business owners to grow successful, profitable, world-changing businesses. Hi, Ayelet, and welcome to the Geula Mamas Club.
So excited to be here with you, Tivi. I really, really am.
Wow. So before we get started on the wealth of information that you're going to share with us today, it's so exciting, I'd love to find out first, how did you get started? You have 2 big things you do. One is like more marketing, and one is that you yourself are a doula. So we're going to talk about the doula part of you today, because that's going to help our mamas here. But when you were a little girl, I'm going to imagine that you did not, play dress up and play doula, right?
Right. That is true.
What happened between then and now? I'd love to hear about
it. Wow. So, if you want to go back that far just for a second, I actually am that person who, every couple of weeks I changed what I wanted to be when I grew up. Everything from astronaut to dancer, well, not dancer so much, but singer, actress, snake trainer. So, I've been through it all. But mommy and caring for people was always something that was part of what I wanted to do. Healing, something in healing. I never said I wanted to be a doctor, which is odd. My sister is a doctor, which is cute, but healing and caring for people was always something that was a part of me. So what happened between then and now? I grew up hearing my mom's birth stories. I am a C-section baby, meaning I was born by a C-section. I'm the oldest, and my siblings were VBACs. VBAC wasn't even a thing, back then. And so my mom is a strong-minded person, and so I grew up hearing, our birth stories and being pretty confident that if my mom can have natural birth, then so can I. And with my first baby, who was also the first grandchild on my mother's side, I got a lot of advice from my aunties about how, I'm going to regret it, or I'm never going to make it, or, you're going to want an epidural, or why would you ever do it without one, and et cetera.
So well meaning. So well
they are. They really are. They wanted to help, And I remember one particular moment. It was probably, let's see, it was Purim. So.
Oh, we seem frozen. One moment, Ayelet. The internet seems to have frozen. So you said, I remember one moment, and then we froze.
Okay. I remember one moment. It was Purim time. So I was about 7 months pregnant, and we were all at my aunt's house for Seuda, and we're in the kitchen. I guess I was getting something, helping bring something in from the kitchen, and my aunts were all in the kitchen with my mom, and they said, again, they launched into this, you're not really going to do this naturally, are you? And I just remember looking desperately at my mother, and she said, I was like, what? Help me out here. And she goes, Ayelet, every contraction is its own thing. It starts, it might get really bad for maybe 30 seconds, maybe 60, and then it's over. Can you handle something for 60 seconds? I was like, yeah. She goes, then you can do this. And that shut everybody up. And it's still advice that I give to my clients sometimes. It's like, remember that this is not, 12 hours of pain. It's waves, and it's something that you can handle in each moment.
Your mom's VBACs, they were natural VBACs?
They were natural.
So she really knew then, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. They were natural. Yeah, they were unmedicated. I actually don't like to use the word natural birth anymore these days. It doesn't really mean anything anymore, or it means something different to every person. But yeah, she felt that the Demerol and lack of movement that she was, in my birth, was part of what led to the bad positioning that ended up ending in a C-section. And so she felt like, I'm not doing that again. I don't want any drugs. My body can do this. And she managed 4 times.
Wise woman, very insightful.
So I grew up with that. And when I was, and so, yes, I did end up giving birth without medication to my first child. But I will say that it was anything but natural. And so that's why I kind of don't even like that term. It was not physiological. I fought against everything around me to give birth vaginally without medication. And it sort of opened my eyes to the idea that birth in a hospital is already an interference in the process. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but for me, it was really not conducive to my process. And so I started looking into other options when I was pregnant again. And long story short, did at the very end of my pregnancy, like 35 weeks, my husband and I got kind of fed up with everything that we had been finding and chose a home birth. And we hired a midwife, and we had a home birth in New Jersey 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago now. And with a midwife and a doula, and it was like this amazing, transcendent, beautiful, healing water birth. And it was like, oh my gosh, everybody has to have babies this way. That was what I thought in that moment. And so I went off to become a doula in order to help other people have births that I had. And I learned very quickly that that's not what a doula does. And that's not our purpose, but that was my motivation at the time. I was like, wow, if everybody knew what kind of birth you could have at home in the water with supportive environment, like you would all do this. And maybe that's true, like if that was really our culture, but that's not really the job of a doula. Our job is to really listen and to hold space and to create a supportive environment for a mother to make the best choices for her birth, for her baby, and for her family. And that's obviously can range from everywhere from home birth to an elective C-section, like everything in between, as long as it's the right thing for her and coming from a place of her own understanding and knowledge and decision making. So
you're 100% right, because I've been to some births that were technically home births, but you never know it. And I've been to some births that were technically hospital births. They were like the most spiritual, the most amazing experience. So you're 100% right. Tuning in to what each woman needs for her body and her, emotional well-being and all the things around it is really the most important.
Exactly right. And that's really what I'm going to talk about is what are the 4 elements that will make or break a positive birth experience. And they really will, what you'll see is that these 4 elements apply in any circumstance, whether you're going off into a forest to give birth by a brook, or or again, like I said, or if there are complications and you have to work through things and whatever ends up happening, these 4 elements are universal. And if you can grasp these, if you can internalize them and find a way to actualize these 4 elements, you are on your way to a positive experience, no matter what the circumstances are.
This is so exciting. Okay, great. So before we go into each of the elements, briefly, what are the 4 elements?
Sure. So the 4 elements are voice, choice, power, and support.
Voice,
And
power, and
choice,
support.
yes. And they do overlap, you'll see, but the thing that I have found in the 5 years of doing birth processing workshops, I call them Birthing Our Stories workshops, and these are workshops where I work with mothers who have had a birth trauma or a traumatic birth, which are 2 different things, when they're holding on to fears or a sense of failure or a sense of confusion about their birth and they can't let it go, the Birthing Our Stories workshop can be really helpful in healing. And so for the past 5 years, I've been listening to people's birth stories in the context of the workshop. And what I have found is that those 4 elements, and I'll go into each one as well, the places where where I can say, this is where you used your voice. This is where you called on your power. This is where you made a decision. This is where you had support. And then the opposite, this is where your voice was silenced. This is where your choice was taken away. This is where, etc. And once you can kind of see those moments and see those elements within the story, it's almost like you can tick it off. It's like the more times you are missing those 4 things, the more negative the experience is going to have been. And the more times you can say, here we have these 4 elements, the more positive the experience is going to be, even though there might have been places where, where you have both.
This sounds to me not only that it could be useful, and 2 things are popping into my mind. One is what you were saying with your beloved aunties trying to give you advice. As soon as you're pregnant, everybody wants to tell you their horror stories, right? And the horror stories they heard from someone else or they read on the news, and it's like, no, go away. So if someone's horror story has gotten into your bubble, can you use this to sort of protect your emotional well-being?
Diffuse it? Sure. I think so. And I think really that comes down to the power of stories, and why I talk about birthing our stories rather than like birth experience or something. The story, when you tell a story, it bypasses your on a subconscious level. When you're hearing a story.
One moment.
Go ahead.
My youngest daughter, Elisheva's home. Remember I told you that I'm making a movie today, right? This is my friend, right? And we're making a movie about how to have a really fun time when you grow up to be a mommy and you have a baby. Because Elisheva's Mora told her that it's really hard to have a baby and that Chava had to suffer and that there was punishment. And it made Elisheva pretty scared to have a baby, right? So I said, don't worry, because mommy loves to talk all about how to have more fun when you're having a baby. So my friend Ayelet is teaching not only you and me, but she's going to be teaching all the women of Am Yisrael how to have more fun when they have a baby. Okay? So we're saving it for you. So now you're going to go off. Wait, you're going to go off and be very quiet with Chaim in the room. You can have hungriness when I'm done talking to my friend Miss Ayelet, okay? Go off with Chaim. I love you. And we'll see you in just a little while, okay? Bye.
What a cutie. I love how you said that. I love that. And you know what?
Go, cutie. Go, and then close the door to the bedroom. The seder, because we're talking about.
Yeah, that's a great example. The way that you spoke to your daughter about birth and having more fun with birth, and that's a story that you told her, and the way that when we're listening to stories, that it's one of the only ways that we can overcome the biases that we have formed in our own minds. So I'll give you an example that happened in one of my first.
1 second, Ayelet. Wait, he's up now. You can go, buddy. Go. As you were saying, you'll give me an example. Yes, you'll give us an example.
So, you know that when a bunch of moms are in a room talking, inevitably the conversation is going to go to birth, and everyone wants to kind of one-up each other on the horror stories. And this experience of sharing our stories should be a place where we connect with each other. It should be a place where we support each other, where we give each other chizuk, and instead we end up judging each other and invalidating each other and interrupting each other and bringing in, as you said, stories that we read on the internet or heard from somebody else. And in my workshops, I make it very clear that the only stories that we can tell in the workshop are firsthand experiences. Because no matter what you read, no matter what you hear from somebody else, it's going to be colored by their experience. And here in the workshop, when you tell your story, I can ask you questions and I can get to the truth of your experience. But when you hear something from somebody else, or when you read it, especially if you read it on a news source, it's going to be colored by the biases that are being, that the person wants you to have. So when you're hearing a story, though, that's why like bedtime stories always have a lesson, right? Because we can overcome our defenses, our like biases and our defenses when we're listening to a story.
Uh-huh.
So I'll give you an example. In one of the very first birth story workshops that I did, I had a woman who introduced herself. So this is a group of 4 women, and it's always like people coming from all different kinds of places. I don't do like a workshop for people who had a C-section or a workshop for people who had whatever. People come from all different backgrounds and decision making. That's in the workshop. Live workshops, correct. Okay. So I had a woman who introduced herself and said, I always have my babies vaginally, but I would never do it without an epidural. I don't know why anybody would. And that's how she started her story. And she went on to tell her story. Okay. And this is just an example about how storytelling changes the way that we think. It has nothing to do with whether or not epidurals are good or bad. Okay. And that wasn't what came up in her stories. We barely touched on the fact that she had epidurals or not. I spoke about it a little bit. I mentioned that in one of her births that it's possible that that the complication of the epidural was the reason that something, et cetera, happened. But that was it. Someone else told her story, and in her— I'm
just going to interrupt you because epidurals have a time and place. Like I
absolutely
have births that the epidural, there was a situation when it was needed. It was amazing. So we're not judging here, but
exactly.
Just information of how to use it in the right time, right?
And actually in my workshop, it's not birth education. I'm not talking about that even. There's no value placed on any decision that a person made. It's just, the purpose of in the workshop is to understand where those decisions came from, what the basis that you might have had at that time, and what might have been, going on to help you understand better what you experienced. So yeah, absolutely. This has nothing to do, like I said before, and like you said, with whether or not epidurals are good or bad. There is a time and place for everything, for every single intervention. And absolutely, that's not what this is about. It's really about our biases. And also, like, I just want to point out that, so she came in with this idea that there's no reason to ever have a birth without an epidural, and nobody when I spoke to her made any mention that that's not the right way to think at all, because there's nothing wrong with that, right? And that's her belief. Okay, so another woman told her story, and her story was different. She had 3 medication-free births in the hospital, and in her 4th birth, she had she was very ill going in. She had the flu, and then she went into labor, and she was exhausted, and it was dragging on, and she ended up taking an epidural, and she felt very guilty about it. And she felt like a failure because she had resorted to this epidural. And so we talked through that, and and then on top of that, her next sort of fear was that if I have another baby, will I be able to do it without an epidural? Like, what if this happens again? And so we talked about so with her, because that was her question, we talked about why the epidural was the right choice for her in that birth. We talked about how if she were, again, to be in a situation where she was constricted in the hospital, what are other options for pain relief, for coping, et cetera. And because that was her question. Okay, so all 4 women tell their stories. It's over 6 weeks. At the end, I always ask everybody to kind of go around and say, what was one thing that you gained from this experience that you didn't expect? And the first mother said, I could imagine trying to have a baby without an epidural. And she's like, I never knew that there were other ways of pain relief. I never knew that there were other ways of coping. I didn't even know that there were so many risks involved. And like, these were things that she didn't know. And I said to myself, and I said to them, I said afterwards, after everybody shared, I said, I just want you to know that this is the only environment that something like that could have happened. A group of mothers together, and you have someone say, I would never have a baby without an epidural. No one on any level is going to convince her that she should try something different. There's no way. But because of stories, and because the way that we listen to stories is that this is not about me. This is about somebody else. This is about their experience. It can open our minds to hearing other possibilities and understanding where other people came from with their decisions. And so this is just sort of something that, if you're here and you're listening and you've never had a baby before, what I would love to say to you is, this is a way for you to come into this experience knowing that all your options are open, and everybody makes decisions from different places. And when you come into an environment like a hospital to have a baby, you also have the decision-making process of the hospital staff and the protocols, and ultimately everyone's ultimate desire is to have the result of a healthy mother and a healthy baby. And when the way that happens is not being communicated well, or when it doesn't sort of jive with what you expected, so that can be difficult, and that can cause trauma or feelings of failure. But when you can come from a place of understanding that everybody has a basis on which they make decisions, you can be more understanding of each other, and you can be less judgmental, and you can also be less judgmental of the judgments that other people are having and coming at you with. So I hope that
you sounded really wise. Less judgmental of the judgment. Can you explain what that means? I like that.
Sure. I will go back to my aunts who have tried to get me to admit that I could never have a natural birth. So where are they coming from? They're coming from 2 places. One is fear for me, right? Their niece, their oldest niece, the first one of that generation having a baby, and, they're wanting me to have a good experience and to be healthy. And they're also coming from their own place of, I made the decision to have an epidural. And for me, it was the right decision. And there's a fear there that maybe if it's not universally correct, meaning if there are people who say that, no, you can have a baby without an epidural, then maybe my choice was wrong. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Right. So
by you going forth, and I see this not just in pregnancy, I mean, you can see it almost in anything, right? If you lost weight in a way that someone else can't lose weight, sometimes people will stop being your friend or crazy things will happen because your success means to them that they're a failure, and they just don't even want to see you, right?
Correct. And it's so, one second, I'm sorry. Just 1 second. I'm in here, so is she planning on coming in here? Oh, okay. I'm in my daughter's room, and I thought she was coming in.
All your kids home today, and they're not feeling well, and you just share this with the world.
Yes, I have. My husband is also sick. I have everybody sick out there. My baby is the only one who's not sick. So it's like I sent him to Mishpachton. I almost stayed with him. I'm like, I'm not going home. But
hardcore mothering is going on here, people.
Seriously, no joke. I'm making chai tea with astragalus and you know, all that good ginger and all that good like immune boosting, and I'm making chicken soup, and now I'm hiding and talking to you guys. So
well, I'm happy we could provide a place for you to hide.
Yes. Yeah. So what were we saying?
So you were saying about the judgment with your aunties and
yes. So judgment when somebody exactly, and you said about losing weight, or you know that somehow what worked for you, if it didn't work for somebody else, or if something works for somebody else, like we always put value judgments on our own decisions, and the reality is that if it worked for you, then it was right. And here's another quote, and I really love this quote, and I created like sort of a meme for it, and so maybe I'll share it with you. You can put it up in the show notes. Maya Angelou, who was just a fantastic American poet, she recently passed away like 2 years ago, had a beautiful line. She said, do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better. And
it's profound.
Let me say that again.
Do the best you can.
Do the best you can until you know better.
Until you know better.
And when you know better, do better.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it gorgeous? And it's like you can retrofit it too. It's like you do the best you can with what you know. In every moment, you can only make the best decision with the resources that you have.
And it is amazing because Hashem, it's like Hashem gives you your knowledge, right? And we always try to do the best we can. And I learned something really recently. She said, if you look back a year from now, you look back on your work, on whatever was going on a year beforehand, and you're not embarrassed by it, then you're doing something wrong. Like, you're supposed to be growing. It's supposed to be. But at the time, don't judge your former self. You did the best you could at that time, right?
I will literally sometimes go in, like, you know, when I'm working with somebody with their birth story, and I'll say, I want you to just close your eyes and go back to that moment, you know, where I don't know why I let them do the induction, or I don't know why whatever. Go back to that moment.
I had a friend who had trauma because she had peer pressure to have a home birth, and she wasn't really a home birthy type of person, right? Now, my training is as a home birth midwife, and this is a friend of mine. So hopefully I didn't put the pressure on her. But she felt somehow peer pressure from the world. She had a home birth. Her births beforehand were hospital, and Baruch Hashem, she realized that, and afterwards she went back to hospital birth. Her home birth was traumatizing for her.
Yeah, and so she's, you know, so when she's asking, absolutely, and when she's asking herself, like, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I make that choice? And I really will go back with them and say, go back into that moment. And really be in that moment, be the person you were in that moment, with the people around you, with the stuff you knew, with the resources you had. Could you have actually made a different decision? And when we do that, they really realize that they couldn't. Like, no, I did. I made the best decision. And yes, it's so freeing. It's so freeing. And even if it turned out to have negative consequences.
I would
You
say
couldn't have
negative.
known that.
Negative. Negative, right? Because like it's all a journey.
For sure, for sure. But even meaning, even if you regret the consequences, even if you feel like, if I would have, even if you recognize, if I would have made a different decision, something else might have happened. First of all, something else might have happened, and it might not have. That's first of all. And second of all, you could not have made a different decision. It was the right decision in that moment. So, so let's go back to the 4 elements, and I really want to go into those, and so that, because I think, like you said, I think most of the people who are listening here, most of you are first-time moms, or you're looking into this, or maybe you've never had a bad experience, which is great, but a way that you can know better and do better in this moment, and have sort of take the steps that will help you to have a positive birth experience, no matter what your situation, is really focusing on these 4 elements. So the first of the 4 elements is your voice, and your voice is really your most powerful tool. It's the tool that you can use to ask for what you want, to ask questions about your care, to to say what you don't want. And if you are not an assertive person, then make sure that you have somebody with you that will hear you and amplify your voice. And that goes into support, right? As I said, they all do overlap. So voice is really important, and I want to teach 2 questions, and I'll share this post with you also, because it's really powerful. A lot of people have talked about the brain assessment. Have you seen that? BRAIN, the 5 things that you can ask, but 5 questions are really too many. I boiled it down to 2. You've never heard that?
I've never heard this.
Okay, so this is a doula thing, and people, like they'll have this sheet and they'll hand it out to their clients. It's the brain assessment, like any intervention. So you ask, what are the benefits? What are the repercussions? Well, yeah, I mean, I can't even remember them. It's too much. But there are 2 questions that you can ask whenever you're uncomfortable with your care. So anytime, whether it's in a doctor's office, whether it's in your birth itself, whether it's with a doula or a midwife, whatever your circumstances, if you're uncomfortable, if you're not sure about what's happening, you can ask these 2 questions. They don't take a long time. So even if it's an emergency, people can stop and answer your questions. And it's non-confrontational, but it brings the power back to you. The first question is, why do you believe this is necessary? So anything, a vaginal exam, an ultrasound, a test, a routine test that you are not comfortable taking, or that you are comfortable taking, but you want to understand better. Anything that's going on, why do you believe this is necessary?
You're asking, you're not saying, why do you believe this is necessary? Right. You're saying, why do you believe this, or why are you saying this is necessary in your own sort of words, not why it's necessary? Because if you only say, why is this necessary, then it's like quoting from the dogma, right? Why are you saying that this is necessary? Why do you believe that? Why is this what you were saying to me, right?
Exactly. Why, right. Why do you feel, so you could say, why do you feel this is necessary? But yes, make it about the person who you're talking to, the care provider. Why do you feel this is necessary? Or why do you feel that I need this? That's another way you can say that. Okay. Or that we need to do this. So that's question number 1. And question number 2 is, what happens if we wait? And those 2, yes, those 2 questions are non-confrontational. but they bring the power back to you. They bring the focus back to you. Remember that, like, when you go into these, when you go into having a birth, I mean, sometimes it can feel like you are an accessory to the process. That, like, everything's sort of happening around you, and the things are beeping, and the other things are bipping, and and there's all these tests and all these whatever. And sometimes it's like, wait a minute, I'm the one having the baby. Like, hey, woo, hello, me. So these two questions can bring the power back to you, bring your voice back up, and get you the support that you need, and allow you to make the choice. So you can see all four elements at work in these two questions.
I can see how that would be so powerful, because I've been at births where they said, oh, we have to do this now. Now, we didn't necessarily ask the first question. Sometimes when the nurse went out, I would explain it to the birthing woman, because I knew they're saying this is necessary because, etc. But when they would come back, we'd say, well, what would happen if we wait? And then they almost always say, well, we can give it 30 minutes. We can't, right? And I did that once, and they were supposed to come back in 30 minutes. Well, they didn't come back for 2 hours, and I had to go call them because she was ready to push, and the whole thing was over.
Exactly.
So that can be a very powerful tool.
It really can. Because then also the other side of it is, if it's a true emergency, you are going to get that answer. We can't wait. There is no waiting here. And then there is no waiting. Because really, when you ask that question, it really does. It's like, sometimes it's just like, okay, we got to do this. This is our job. We're going through our motions. We're doing what we have to do. And they don't think about waiting. Why would you wait? But once you ask that,
right.
Once you say, like, what happens if we wait? Mm-hmm. Then it's like, oh, yeah, we can wait.
Or not. Or if they say, no, we can't wait, and then you don't have to hold the guilt. You don't have to hold the what if.
Correct.
And, I see this. I mean, we're talking about birth, but I do see, when I talk to my teenagers, sometimes they have those kinds of things also. I went to school, and this happened, and that happened. And it seems so similar what you're saying, where their power or their voice or a decision was made. It seems like these are really good tools for life.
Definitely.
Wow.
Definitely.
Going back to what you said earlier about, if you feel that you're not a person who might be able to assert yourself, to have someone with you, I think that really is so important, because, well, first of all, even if you're assertive, I know for myself, I'm fairly assertive when I want something or I don't want something. But I don't want to have to be assertive in labor.
Yes.
So I told my midwives, like, this is what I want. I want you to keep my husband posted. For me, that's very important, because I worry about him. I want you to keep him posted. And then I told him, I want you, that if I say this, I want you to say this for me, right? So I tried to have all the people that were around me knowing beforehand what I want, what my, obviously it helps if you know, because with your first baby, you don't quite know yet, but just observing or trying to from the things that you're learning to say, oh, well, if this happens, what might I want? And the person that you choose to be with you, like you had said, you didn't say that they have to be an assertive person. What you said was you want someone who will speak your voice. And that's really different, right? Because an assertive person could almost be covering you. Like I had somebody, I had said I wanted to change position and pushing. And she said, no, you're okay. So I continued pushing with no progress. I ended up having sore muscles until I said, I'm changing position. I want to change position. The baby was born like almost instantly.
Yeah.
And that was actually my last hospital birth. It was a midwife in the hospital. And that was my push to go for home birth and my personal journey. Because I realized that even though she was so nice and she was just trying to be kind and not force me to change position, but I wanted to change position. I knew what my body was saying. And the position I wanted to change and was technically a worse, again, air quotes, a worse position. So she was like, no, you don't have to do that. That's my body wanted. Yeah. So to try to look for someone who will speak, who will listen and like share your voice, and not necessarily the person who knows the most. I don't think you need. I mean, a doula is the best, and you want to interview different doulas. But if you can't have a doula, someone who just you feel connected with, a mom, a sister, a friend, anybody to be there for your husband, anyone to be there for you can be so powerful, right?
Absolutely. And that's what support, that's the support part, is making sure that you have the team around you that is going to give you the support you need, that you're going to, your team is not just the people who you bring, but it's the people who are there as well. So you want to make sure that you're getting to that you're going to to a place where you feel comfortable, where you feel that you will have your voice, your choice, and your power, and be supported in that place. And so it's not which place has the most beautiful rooms, and it's not which place has, the people who seem the nicest. If you're being really honest with yourself, you want to choose an environment where your very strong feeling is that they are there for you, that they are listening to you, that they that the people around you, that the staff and the protocols and what's it called? Protocols of that place are supportive of the woman's process, of your process and what you want. So that's something to be really, really aware of when you're looking at birth places, at hospitals, or different options. Unfortunately, I think hospital or home are the only options these days. You don't have birth centers here, but maybe one day we will.
In Israel, we don't have birth centers right now, fortunately, but our women could be anywhere in the world.
Sure, that's right.
Where there's a birth center that's kind of a nice in between.
Right, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And I'll say one thing about doulas. I really don't think that every single person needs a doula at all. I do birth visioning sessions with prospective mothers, and I help them to build their team. So I can, so very often I will say, well, in your case, you don't necessarily need a doula, but we can do a session with your husband, or a session with your partner, or your mother, or whomever, to help them be that person for you. And so, but just knowing that the person who you're bringing, the people that you're bringing with you, like you said, Sivi, that are amplifying your voice. They are not going to override your voice, but they're going to be listening to you and reminding you what you wanted. So that's a voice.
And also, as a liaison between you and the staff or the midwives or whoever you're interacting with.
Right. And really that also depends on the dynamic, though. I want to be really clear that a doula is not always an advocate. We can't always take that role. It really depends on the dynamic in the room. And very often, a doula, if the doula or the birth partner, even, if it's the husband or if it's a friend or a cousin or whomever, is the one saying something, then that can actually make more problems.
I know, I'm so happy you brought that up, because I use the word liaison and it's not the right word. You are correct. And in my experience, you're 1,000,000% correct, because if you speak up and say, oh, well, she doesn't want that, you're right, it's bad. But what I meant more of to say, to be a person who can go get you a drink, who can call, say, hey, she needs a pillow, or could you come check her, she has a question. That sort of voice for you.
Yes, absolutely. And the benefit of having somebody who is outside of your family or your friend, the benefit of hiring somebody to be that person, like a doula, is that a doula is not going to be afraid for you. Like their emotions are not going to get in the way of them helping you. And that's something that I see, that's sort of like a downfall that I see kind of often when couples don't take a doula is that as prepared and as loving and as supportive as the husband is, he ends up getting, nervous by the situation and then not being able to be that sort of unbiased, objective person who is there for your interests and to protect you.
More than that, a doula knows that labor is natural. They know that birth is normal. If it's your mom or your husband or sister, this is their first birth too, probably. And they love you dearly. So you're right. You have all these different relationships that can be tangled up potentially. And that can be more tricky. So you're right. Once you have a doula, she knows what she's doing. She's not emotionally involved. She believes that birth is normal and natural. That can potentially, again, either both of them have different situations, but that can be really,
Right, and she'll recognize when something is really not normal. So, meaning a doula will have that, should have that experience and that ability to say, right, so that's why they're saying, that's why this is a place where we are going to divert from your birth plan. We are going to go in a different direction because this is actually a complication. And she'll be able to say, right, so I know that this feels like it's crazy, but it's totally normal. So that's a benefit of having an outside person in that role, but it's certainly, again, not necessary for everybody, and it can be, there are other ways to get that support.
So we've gone through 2 now of the 4 ways.
So again, they really are all very intertwined, but we talked about voice, choice. Choice is really where, it goes also to those 2 questions make that really. I'm sorry, I'm losing my my words now. Those 2 questions that I taught you really can bring your choice out as well and make that really, front and center. So choice is, it goes 2 ways. Choice is, number one, that you are always, the choice is always yours. So it goes 2 ways. It goes in the direction of, I'm the one making the choice, but also I'm responsible for my choices. And being responsible for your choices is different than blaming yourself for the outcome.
Right. So you're saying you've asked those questions. Why do you think this is necessary to do right now, or something of that variant? And is this important to do right away? So that's the second question. Right?
Yeah, the first question is, why do you believe this is necessary? And the second one is, can we wait? What happens if we wait?
Okay. So once you're going to give us this written, right? Yeah. Okay, great. So once you've asked that, you're saying, then your choices are clear. They're more clear, and then you can choose. If this is an emergency, we need this to save your baby's life, and no, this cannot wait. That's it. There's no choice, because the choice is clear. Let's do it.
Right. But I want to make it very clear, though, that you do always have a choice. A person in that situation can be told, there is no other, this is a dangerous situation. We must take you for a C-section to save your baby. And a person in that situation can say, no, I'm leaving this hospital. They can.
That is true. I've seen that happen. You're right.
And meaning, I'm not suggesting that anybody do that. I am saying that you always have a choice.
Well, that reminds me of Viktor Frankl, right? The man who wrote, he went through the Holocaust, and he was a therapist. Hi, why are you home early? Sorry about that, a second. What were we saying? Do you remember?
Choice. We were talking about choice, about always having a choice.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. That's that's so true. Yeah, you really do. Oh, so Viktor Frankl, I was saying that he went through the Holocaust, and he was already, what was he, a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, right? And he realized that even in such a situation, even in a concentration camp, you still have a choice. The choice is to be happy. The choice is your attitude. what's going on in your mind. You always, always, even when all your choices are taken away. So certainly you have the choice, like you said, to just get up and walk out of the hospital or say, no, it's
right.
my choice, in my opinion, the choice.
But again, that when you know that you have that choice and you say, I choose to trust you, I choose to take this action, you know that you made the right choice. You don't say I had no choice.
Right. You're not saying
and that
came in, the baby was in distress, and they had to do a C-section, and I had no choice. You're saying they came in, they showed me that the baby was in distress. I understood that the best decision is to do a cesarean section, and I made the choice to do it. Totally different story, as you were saying. Totally different story.
Totally different story.
Wow.
And so, we're talking here about also, I want to take a step back and say, we're talking here about a lot of, complications and things. Most of the time, your person, goes into labor, starts having contractions, goes in, this, and I'm just going to say it, goes into labor, starts having contractions, the baby moves their way down, through the pelvis, the contractions get stronger, you feel like you have to push, you push out your baby, and then everything's beautiful. Like most of the time, that's how it goes. Whether you're at home, whether you're on your way to the hospital, whether you're in the hospital, whether you're wherever you are, like I said, whether you're in the forest next to a babbling brook, like that's usually how birth goes.
Even
the reason
you fall asleep, birth will still happen.
Exactly.
Right? I've seen that happen, right?
Absolutely.
You know what to do. 99%, whatever the percentage is, most of the time it all works.
And that's why I like to talk about physiological birth as opposed to natural birth. The idea that, this is the physiological process, and these are the things that interfere with it. And these are the things that you could do if you're having an interference to overcome those interferences and get back onto the physiological track. And I think that if we, even in retrospect, like if we look at stories of successful inductions, successful epidural births, births that don't end up in a cascade of interventions, as they say, you will find, or even a successful emergency C-section that, and when I say successful, I mean that obviously everyone comes out okay, but also the recovery time is good. Like there wasn't any complications in that process. You will find that if you look deeply, you'll find that there were factors that supported the physiological process within the situation. So I'm not going into that. There are resources for that. I'm sure you have there's a great article by Sarah Buckley. It's kind of old now, but it's really still very on point, called the hormonal, I'll share the PDF with you. You can share it with people. For the more sciencey among us, you can go and read that. But it's really, this is a physiological process that all mammals go through. That's the bottom line. And when we interfere with that process, then, you're going to have complications. And when we support that process, you're going to have fewer complications. I think that's a really important factor about choice, is that you always have a choice and you make the best choice. And
that you can, with the information and with the knowledge and with the situation, that was the best choice that you made at the time. And that's it. And to be like Shalem, to be happy with that.
Correct. And, one more thing that I'll say, Henry Ford, who has some great lines, no matter what else you want to think about him, but he's the creator of Ford Motors, right? The first car. He was a shrewd businessman, but he was often made fun of that he wasn't very smart. And his answer was, and he created the first motor car. So his answer always was, I don't need to know everything. I just have to surround myself by the people who do. And I think that that's a really powerful message for birth as well, because now that we have access to so much information on the internet and whatever, it's almost more pressure to know everything. And you don't need to know everything. You don't need to know everything. You need to choose to have people around you who you trust, who you can ask. And then you know that you made that decision basically in advance.
100%. When I was in midwifery school, they said that midwives sometimes have the hardest births because your brain is running, whatever, I sneeze. That could mean this complication. You don't need to know that. My goodness. I had a baby when I was in the middle of midwifery school, and she was right. And I had to tell myself, stop. Birth works. I know what I'm doing. My body's good. Stop thinking so much. I had to know that knowledge for a test, but I don't need it now because it's all normal. It's all working. And it was for sure, it was my longest birth. It wasn't hard. It just, my labor just sort of kept stopping because my brain kept going. I had to get my brain out of the way, take a nap, take a shower, do something, and then labor would start again. Mm-hmm. And 100% true. There are so many good things about technology. It's bringing us together. We can share things, but those are the dangers of it also. Everybody thinking they have to know, or going on those groups, right? The support groups. And one person says, oh my goodness, whatever, my baby's doing this, or, I didn't feel something or whatever. And everybody, you could sit there for hours and just get into like group panic thing. Oh,
yes, absolutely. So know who to trust, know how to recognize, when I talk about choice, I also, right, like at every stage, choose to do a certain amount of research, choose to find people that you trust so that you don't have to do all the research and hold all that information in your head. Choose to analyze the truth of anything that you're reading, right? Choose to verify your sources. And so then when you come to your labor and you come to your birth, first of all, you've made some choices in advance. That's, and then the choices that you make in labor, you can feel really confident in them, that they were the right choice, that you always have a choice, that you are using your voice and your power and the support team that you've built around you to make the best choices. So that's
you go back to one of the things you said was to choose to verify the things you're reading. I think you didn't mean every article you read to verify it. I think what you meant, and I'm asking if this is what you meant, was if you're going to base your decisions on something that you're reading or on something that you heard, choose to verify that and let the other things go, right?
Yeah.
You just let it go, and everyone has what's right for them and not get stuck. People can get stuck in these internet discussions on, and don't you feel people are more passionate about pregnancy, birthing, and babies than more than politics, I think. I mean, the women, the way
I don't know until you talk about vaccines, so don't open that can of worms.
No, I'm including vaccines.
Oh, you're including that? I guess so. I guess that's part of it. Yeah, I think we are. I think we are very passionate about it. But, I think that goes back again to stories. If you think about it, birth is an experience that every biological mother has experienced. And I do need to qualify that and say every biological mother has experienced, but still today, most people who are mothers gave birth to their babies. And it's this shared experience. And when we have a global shared experience, think about, these are tragedies, but still think about 9/11. Think about Kennedy's assassination. If you ask anybody who was alive when Kennedy was killed, they can tell you exactly where they were, what they were doing, what they were eating, what it smelled like. Like, they can tell you exactly where they were in that moment. I know that my parents can tell me exactly where they were when they heard on the radio, Harabayit Biadenu. You know, they know exactly where they were, what was going on, everything that changed around them from those simple words like this, you know, just to bring in a good example of a universal
That's a
experience.
special example, yeah.
But right, and you know, and 9/11, that's something that's current for most of us. It's like almost everyone can tell, like if you say, where were you on that? I can tell you exactly where I was, who I was on the phone with, what was going on. You know,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
shared global experience. And I was in New York. I mean, people here in Israel will tell me where they were when they heard about 9/11. And it's a
Get
global shared experience. And birth is that. And we, because of that, and because it's something that we actually experience many of us more than once, um, you know, I think that it's something that is a very transformational experience. It's very heavy in our
Not heavy in a bad
life
way,
journey.
weighty, like
No, yes, weighty. Yes, it is uh, a weighty experience. Exactly.
it's powerful also, right?
Powerful.
It's like when you birth your baby, you birth yourself. Like you are a new person, a better person,
Yes.
that experience, right? And I like
Each
what you said,
time.
each time. Yeah, no, I'm a different experience. You learn things about yourself, you develop, you grow, you have these just beautiful, powerful, it's like connecting to nature and olam haba, and like it's like the 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 heavens just open and this baby comes forth or something. It's being a part of something bigger than yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. I like.
Connecting to all the other women who have had this experience before you and who are actually having this experience in this exact moment with you.
Right. I like to think about when I'm in labor. I gave this example about, I was talking about like what a Geula Mama is. So I was saying, I think of the previous generation, right? So especially when I'm in labor, I think, okay, my mom birthed me, my grandmother birthed her mother, right? And I start just counting back. And my mom, Baruch Hashem, is still alive, but all the rest of them, they're not. So I kind of imagine them hovering over me and like being there with me, and each of them had to give birth to the next one for me to be here today. All these women that I've never met,
Yeah.
I don't know them, but I imagine that they're just there for me, and then one day, you know, when it's my turn to like go meet them, they'll be like, wow, it was so amazing. I don't know, like this big like welcome home party, you know.
We'll
But
be having our,
it gives me energy when I'm in labor to know that I'm not the first person to do this. I
yeah,
have not invented a new thing, right? They all went through it to get me here, and I'm going to get through it too.
yeah, yeah. And that's very powerful as well. Um, yeah, I mean, I think I covered all the four elements. You know, they, like I said, they're kind of fluid, but voice, choice, power, and support.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So using your voice or finding the people who will amplify your voice, which connects with support. You know, knowing that you always have a choice and using that power wisely. Your power is everywhere where um, you know, where you stand in your knowledge, in your intuition, in your um, you know, when you're self-possessed of yourself, when you know this is the right thing for me, this is what I'm feeling. And very often in labor, you can be kind of, you know, pushed around to forget that you are the one doing this. And every time that you bring yourself back into your own experience, that's your power. Um, and support, uh, again, is building a birth team of people who you trust, of an environment that you trust, of the people who are going to support the other the other three elements for you, and to be aware in your experience, in your birth experience, of those four things, so that you can grab them back if you feel like you're losing them.
And it doesn't seem like it's a list you have to memorize, but if you're there and suddenly you feel, wait a minute, my voice is not being heard, you'll have a bit of an awareness, like a buzz, to say, okay, what can I do? How can I make myself heard? How can I not be forced into a decision, but get the answer so that I can make the same decision perhaps, but make it consciously and be in that moment, sort of. This is amazing. This is really a very powerful tool to use. It's great.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, I'll give you a really beautiful example. So just to close it off, a story. I was attending a birth of it was a fifth birth. She had had a C-section at some point in the past, but she had had several vaginal births, and this time she was planning a home birth. It was her first home birth, and it was also her first birth in Israel. The baby was had actually kind of gotten stuck in not a great position. Like the labor was sort of dragging on for a really long time, and she was starting to get tired. And the person who was attending the home birth, the actual medical provider, I don't want to say who it was or anything, was a little bit not communicative. And so that sort of didn't allow us to work with the situation. I had the suspicion that there was a bad position, that the baby was not in a good position, but I'm not the one doing any internal checks. And so, when I asked, I got sort of a vague answer. And so, but like, no, it's fine. And so I didn't, so we all kind of were not in touch with each other, I guess you could say. And at the point where she decided to transfer to the hospital because things were just not progressing. The baby wasn't coming down, and there wasn't really a way to know why the baby wasn't coming down. And there wasn't really distress at that point. So it wasn't like scary, but it was just like, I think that the right place to be right now is in the hospital. It turned out that the ride to the hospital was bumpy and like, whatever, and really brought the baby right down. And by the time we got into the labor room, she was pushing. But because the baby's head had kind of molded in a really weird way, it was still sort of a rough descent. And so a doctor comes in and looks at so the midwife is sort of actively, getting there. This woman, again, it was her first birth in Israel. She didn't have a lot of Hebrew, and there was a lot of commotion around her, and it wasn't comfortable. And so this midwife is like actively going to be helping this mother get that baby out and vaginally. And a doctor walks in and looks at the chart and says, what? This woman's been in labor for 12 hours with no progress. Isn't this, and she had a C-section before, isn't this a C-section? This happens to be a hospital where the midwives have such fantastic autonomy. So they were like, this midwife looked at the doctor and said, "Ma pitom, no way, I'm getting this baby out." In the meantime, the mother didn't understand what was going on. And she's like, why is somebody, the midwife, I don't want to scare anybody, but the midwife was very actually, pulling the baby out, which is not comfortable. But in her mind, I'm saving you from a C-section, but the mother had no idea. So at some point when it got really intense, I stopped everybody, said, wait 1 second. And I looked at her, and like they all kind of looked at me, but I looked at her in the eye, and I said, listen, this is what's going on. The doctor wants, I said, exactly. I said, the doctor is wanting to do another C-section, but the midwife is sure that she can get this baby out, but it's going to be uncomfortable. Are you okay with that? And she said, yes, let's get this baby out. And she pushed with all her might, and the midwife pulled, and the baby came out, and everyone was fine. And he's a big, beautiful baby. He's 1.5 years now, and he's gorgeous, and everything was fine. But I was, in my mind, I was playing that scenario without me.
Right,
without somebody there. That would have been a traumatic
trauma, right?
Exactly. That would have been, why did this happen to me? Having no idea that she was saved from a C-section.
Right. So once you explained it to her in English and she understood, she was on board. It probably didn't even hurt that much because she was like, oh, whatever, no big deal. But it was when somebody was doing something to her, it would intensify the pain. It scared her. It could have caused potentially trauma. That's amazing. One second, my head.
I thought that was a really powerful sort of illustration of what these four things look like, because in just in that very short story that I just told, we saw her voice and power being taken away and given back to her so that she could make a choice. Because really I wanted to open it up for her to say, no, I don't want you to do this. Take me to the operating room. Like, let her make that choice, because this is not, that was how intense it was.
You're right. She could have said, oh, this is what's going on. Okay, no, I actually would prefer a C-section. She could have made that choice, correct?
Exactly. I mean, I just want to make it clear, like, that's how intense the situation was, that would have been a really valid choice in that moment. But also that if she were choosing to continue with the vaginal birth, to know what she's up against and to make that choice. And so she made that choice. She made her voice heard. I was able to return her voice to her. She stood in her power and pushed that baby out. And she had the support that she needed to be able to do it. And so that, kind of brings everything together. You can see that was a situation that really could have been traumatic, and instead it was empowering.
Wow, it's amazing. Thank you. All right, I have a question for you, Ayelet.
Sure.
Okay, close your eyes, breathe deeply, get into the moment now, and I want to know the first thing that pops into your mind, I want you to envision like all the women of Am Yisrael before you, okay? And you're standing there, and you're like, I imagine it's like Har Sinai, right? And you're standing there, you've got all the women's section there. And you have one sentence, whatever pops to your mind, one sentence to say to all the women of Am Yisrael. What would that be?
It would be heard.
I'm getting chills. Be heard. Okay, what does that mean for you?
Each and every woman in Am Yisrael, and each and every woman in the world has a voice, has a story. And our stories are what shape our lives. Be heard. Tell your story. Share your voice and be heard.
Amen. Amen. That is so beautiful. Wow. All right. We've come to the part of our show where we get to give away presents. And Ayelet and I have, I love it. I love giving away presents. It's so fun. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of different kinds of presents today for you. First of all, Ayelet's going to give us, right now, tell us how women can be in touch with you. Okay? And then this is still going to be in the show notes. You don't have to write it down if you're not next to a pen or anything. But if you book a session, right, and there's different things that you do, let us know what you do.
Sure.
What do they get? If they mention Geula Mamas, when they get to you, what happens?
Sure. So first of all, I invite you to schedule I call it a virtual coffee, just a 15-minute, conversation to get to know better what your needs are, whether it's preparing for an upcoming birth or working through a previous birth. So that's just always. And that you can find, I'll put the link in the show notes. It's healingher.as.me/comp session, but I will put I will put a link in the show notes. That's anybody and everybody, anytime, please reach out to me, and we can talk about what's going on for you. But Geula Mamas, I would love to offer a complimentary either full birth visioning session. So that's a half-hour session where we create a birth I don't call it a birth plan, but a birth vision for you, help you clarify what it is that you want, what's important to you, so that you can go on and make sure that you can grab those 4 elements in your birth and your experience. And if you are trying to work through a previous birth, then I'd be very happy to offer any Geula Mama also a full 30-minute birth story comfort session where we talk about your birth story a little bit, talk about how it's affecting you now, and figure out what the best steps forward are, whether it's a Birthing Our Stories workshop or session, or whether it's a different modality that can help you to work through your birth story.
So is this for anyone who contacts you and mentions Geula Mamas can have a half an hour, or is this for one person?
Oh, you wanted to do a drawing, right? Did you want to?
I'm about to do a drawing.
Okay, so we can do it. So that's for anybody. Okay, that's for anybody. Any Geula Mama can have a free, a complimentary half-hour session.
I can have a virtual coffee to set up. Is it either or?
No, it's not. I have people who like do these. I don't want to say, they're not taking advantage because I love doing it, but they'll like call me every couple of months they'll set up a 15-minute session. I'm like, okay.
I set up a 15-minute virtual coffee with you, and that's part of today. So this is great. And I didn't know I could do it again. So good.
You can do it again. Please do.
Virtual coffee. Anyone who mentions Geula Mamas gets a half an hour of either preparing their birth vision in advance, or if they had any sort of trauma or things they want to process, talking about that, whatever they choose, right? And then setting up whatever they may or may not need going forward, right? And on top of that, you also want to give something away in a drawing?
Sure. Yeah, I know. What I will give away in the drawing is oh, wow. I didn't think about that in advance. I want to give something special. Oh, I know. I would be very happy to give a copy of the labor readiness guide for doulas and birth partners. It's designed to be read by a birth partner, but it's a great tool for couples to go through ways of preparing your body in the 3rd trimester for a positive and easier labor. So I'm happy to send that PDF out to the person who wins this drawing.
Great. So the way you are eligible for this drawing is simply by being a member of the Geula Mamas Club, the Facebook club. And I've put everyone's names into my sweet little mug here, okay? So first is, picking it up, and I'm going to pick a name at random. So this person, first thing we're giving away here is a copy of, what was that, the labor readiness guide, you said?
Yeah.
Awesome. Deborah Beanham. Deborah, I will be in touch, and we will find out your snail mail. Oh no, that's actually email. Okay, this is the PDF. Find out her email, or can you Facebook message it?
I can. Actually, I'll just. I think Deborah has a copy because she is a birth professional, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So maybe you want to choose another name and see if there's a mama in there who can.
Right. I know it's sometimes hard. Some of the people I know. This person I know is also a birth professional and also part of your group. Let me just find someone who's not. Wait, I think this person is not part of your group because I don't know everyone in here, but I'm getting to know everyone. It's very exciting. Is Ronit Peskin part of your group?
She is not.
All right, Ronit Peskin. And if you personally don't need it, you can also
pass it on,
send it to, also save it for your daughters, daughter-in-laws, etc. Whatever person might need, use it for your friends. Okay, great. Well done, Ronit!
Yay!
Now, I have made some very, very yummy presents for you guys, okay? And I'm going to make some more. These are magnets. And during our conversation here, Ayelet, you said a few things that were magnet-worthy. So we're going to go over that, and we're going to make some more magnets because I'm very into making magnets these days, okay?
Cool.
So I have made 2 magnets. One of them says, I am so precious. Hashem loves me more than I can ever imagine. That is what I want you to have on your refrigerator, and so that you can say that affirmation and remember that when you're going around your day. The second one says, watch me bring the Geula. Each and every Geula Mama is part of bringing the Geula, and if someone thinks we can't do it, they should watch because we're doing it. So
Nice.
these are that I'm going to be sending via snail mail. I'm going to wrap up. I actually bought some wrapping paper. I'm going to be wrapping them up. I'm super, super excited here. So let's see. Now this can be for birth professionals. So I'm putting names back in because anybody can get a Geula Mama's magnet, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We have Rachel Ritan. I don't know how you pronounce her last name. Please forgive me if I mess up anybody's last name. I know her, so I know she'll forgive me. Okay, great. and Einat Gringas. I'm so sorry. Last names are so hard, right?
Sometimes
all right.
they are.
So we have Rachel and Einat. Woo! Yofi will be sending those out. I will be in touch with the addresses and everything. I am so excited, and I want you to remember that me and Ayelet, both of us love you more than you can imagine. Also, Hashem loves you. We love you. Kisses and hugs and goodbye. Love you.